Hi there, and welcome to this day in history for March 29th. March 29th is the 88th day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, 89th in leap years, with 277 days remaining to the end of the year. Today's word is juberous. Juberous is an adjective that means doubtful, hesitating, undecided. It's thought to be an alteration of the word dubious. Earliest documented use of the word juberous is 1871. I'd like to take a moment to mention that links to my sources are included in the show notes. Ask you to go ahead and click that like button. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Remember that you can share this video with others using a link in your email, messaging, or social media. There is a link to my This Day in History playlist in the show notes. I'll also put a link up in the corner there for you. And with that, on March 29th in the year 845, the city of Paris was sacked by Viking raiders. Those Viking raiders. Well, they collected a huge ransom in exchange for leaving. King Gustav III of Sweden died on March 29th, 1792. He'd been shot in the back at a midnight masquerade ball at Stockholm's Royal Opera about 13 days previously. The United Kingdom annexed Punjab on March 29, 1849. This is an area of the northern part of the Indian subcontinent, covering part of what is now eastern Pakistan and northern India. On March 29, 1867, Queen Victoria agreed to the British North America Act, which would establish Canada on July 1st. The Royal Albert Hall was opened by Queen Victoria on March 29, 1871. A fraternal organization known as the Knights of Columbus was established on March 29, 1882. Pharmacist John Pemberton brewed the first batch of Coca Cola in Atlanta on March 29, 1886. On March 29, 1927, a vehicle known as the Sunbeam 1000 HP, also known as the Slug, probably because of the way it looked, set a new land speed record of 203.79 miles per hour at Daytona Beach, Florida. In 1927, over 200 miles an hour in 1927. This was powered by 2 aircraft engines, and it was the first car to travel over 200 miles per hour. Ethel and Julius Rosenberg were convicted of conspiracy to commit espionage on March 29, 1951. On March 29, 1957, the New York, Ontario, and Western Railway made its final run, becoming the first major U.S. railroad to be abandoned in its entirety. On March 29, 1961, the 23rd Amendment to the United States Constitution was ratified. This is the one that allows residents of Washington, D.C. to vote in presidential elections. On March 29, 1971, Lieutenant William Calley was convicted of premeditated murder and sentenced to life in prison for his part in the My Lai massacre. Interesting to note that many Americans were outraged by what they perceived to be an overly harsh sentence. Governors in states all over the country directly requested clemency for Calley. In 1971, of course, it was way before the days of social media, and any phone calls that you made outside your immediate area were long distance, charged by the minute, and very expensive. So people would send telegrams to express their immediate and strong opinions and feelings. The White House received over 5,000 telegrams about this matter, 100 to 1 in favor of leniency. Eventually, he was released on house arrest pending appeal, and while it was determined that pretrial publicity, denial of defense witnesses, and improperly drawn charges had denied Calley a fair trial, the case was not overturned. Ultimately, his sentence expired. Still alive, Calley is 77 years old at this time. In a somewhat related matter, on March 29, 1973, the last United States combat soldiers left South Vietnam. On March 29, 1974, NASA's Mariner 10 became the first space probe to fly past the planet Mercury. Also on March 29th, 1974, the Tarrecata Army was discovered in Shanxi Province, China. I'll talk a little bit more about this in last year's episode, and I'll put a link to that up in the corner for you there. The Baltimore Colts football team moved to Indianapolis on March 29, 1984. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed above the 10,000 mark for the first time on March 29, 1999. This was during the height of the dot-com bubble. Also on March 29, 1999, a 6.8 earthquake hit India. And that's all I have for you today. Hope you learned something you didn't know before. I know I sure did. I always do. Mr. Bowers asked me last night, in all this looking up and finding out, is there anything that has just really surprised you? And the answer to that is yes. Every day. Every day I learn something that I didn't know before that's a bit of a surprise to me. But I couldn't think of a specific example for him right then. But I sure do. Every day I find out something I didn't know before. Anyway, as always, links to my sources are included in the show notes. I'll put that link to last year's episode and the playlist up in the corner for you. I also post these videos on my blog, No Really. That's what it's called, No Really. There's a link to that in the show notes as well. Whenever we have pictures and videos, I usually get those from Bing Images, licensed free to share and use, or public domain. Our lovely outro music is Divine Life Society by Jesse Gallagher from YouTube Music Library. There's also a link in the show notes to more of his work if you appreciate that kind of music. Seems like a lovely human being and beautiful music. Anyway, that's it. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.
I found this on the web.
Thank you, but I wasn't talking to you. Thank you. Oh, we're still recording. Okay, good. Okay. I don't know how all that's going to go together, or if it's even going to make it to the video. We'll just see. That's not going to go. Probably cut all that out. That'll all be laying on the cutting room floor. So I'll just do that whole thing over. That might not make it into the video. We'll see. Changing it up.